Every Christmas Eve, the CEO, Daniel Hawthorne, sat alone in his enormous, silent mansion, pretending he didn't hear the echo of his late wife's laughter bouncing through his memory. The world believed he preferred solitude, but the truth was simpler and sadder. Christmas had stopped being Christmas the day he lost her. He decorated nothing, cooked nothing, and acknowledged nothing, except the ache that returned at the same hour every year, pressing against his chest like a weight he had learned to live with. He sat by the large window, watching snow accumulate over the dark driveway, untouched and smooth like a blank page. People assumed a billionaire's life was full of company and warmth, but Daniel's reality was an empty house too big for one man and too quiet to drown out regret. His staff were off for the holidays as always, because he insisted they celebrate with their families. Families he envied more than he would ever admit. At exactly 9 p.m., when the loneliness reached its sharpest point, Daniel heard something he hadn't heard in years, a soft knock on the front door. He froze. No one ever came. No one ever dared. The Hawthorne estate was nearly a fortress, and visitors needed clearance. Yet the knocking came again, timid but persistent, cutting through the silence like a candle in darkness. Cautiously, he walked toward the door, his footsteps echoing through halls lined with untouched holiday decorations his late wife once picked with joy. When he opened it, he found a single mother and her little daughter standing in the cold. Snow clung to their coats, and their cheeks were red from wind. The mother looked nervous, clutching a small box. The child offered the faintest smile. "Mr. Hawthorne?" the woman asked, her voice trembling from both cold and uncertainty. Daniel nodded, unsure how they even reached his door. She quickly explained that her car had broken down near the gate, and they had walked through the storm seeking help. She apologized for disturbing him and said they would leave if necessary. But the daughter, with her innocent eyes, looked up and whispered, "Mommy said maybe a kind man lives here." Daniel, rigid, composed, feared in boardrooms, felt something inside him soften unexpectedly. He invited them in, offering warmth, safety, and shelter for the night. As they stepped inside, the little girl gasped at the beauty of the mansion's architecture, even though it was devoid of any festive cheer. "It looks like a giant castle," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. The mother introduced herself as Claire and her daughter as Emily. They had been traveling to spend Christmas with Claire's sister but got caught in the storm. Daniel offered them hot chocolate, something he used to make for his wife during winter nights. He hadn't prepared it in years, but the muscle memory returned effortlessly, surprising him. Emily sipped her drink and looked around. "Where's your Christmas tree?" she asked innocently. The question stabbed Daniel deeper than the girl could ever understand. Claire scolded her gently, but Daniel raised a hand to stop her. "It's all right," he said quietly. I didn't put one up this year." Emily's head tilted in confusion. "But Christmas needs a tree." Something about that simple statement lingered in his mind like a forgotten melody. Emily asked if she could explore the mansion and, with Claire's permission, she wandered carefully through the open spaces. Her footsteps brought life back into rooms that had been untouched and unloved for years. Meanwhile, Claire apologized repeatedly for intruding. Daniel reassured her it was perfectly fine. Still, he couldn't ignore the exhaustion on her face or the subtle sadness her smile tried to hide. She admitted she'd been struggling financially and emotionally since her husband abandoned them 2 years earlier. Christmas, for her, was more stress than celebration. Daniel felt an unexpected connection to her words. Loss was loss, no matter how different the shapes it appeared in. He found himself opening up in ways he never expected, telling her about his wife, how Christmas used to be magical, and how everything changed after she passed. Claire listened attentively, her eyes soft with empathy rather than pity. Emily returned with something surprising, a dusty Christmas ornament she found on a shelf, one Daniel hadn't touched in a decade. She held it up proudly. "Can we put this somewhere? Just to make it feel like Christmas." Daniel stared at the ornament, his throat tightening. It was one his wife had made by hand. Claire froze, unsure if Emily had crossed a boundary. But instead of withdrawing, Daniel smiled, a small, fragile smile that felt foreign on his face. "Yes," he whispered, "let's put it somewhere special." Emily beamed, and that single action seemed to breathe warmth into the room. It felt as if a sealed door inside Daniel's heart had opened, just a crack, letting a little light in. As the hours passed, the storm worsened, making it impossible for Claire and Emily to leave. Daniel insisted they stay the night, preparing a guest room with fresh linens. Emily jumped excitedly on the soft bed, marveling at its size. Claire apologized again, but Daniel simply said, "It's been a long time since this house had laughter." Later, Daniel found Emily exploring the dusty attic. She held an old photo album of him and his wife. "She was beautiful," Emily said softly. Daniel nodded, feeling the familiar sting of grief. "She loved Christmas," he told her. Emily looked up. "Then maybe she sent us here to help you remember." Her words shook him, gentle yet powerful. He helped Emily down the attic stairs, carrying the album with him. Claire noticed the softened expression on his face and felt both gratitude and curiosity. She saw a man who had been frozen in time finally beginning to thaw. Emily asked if they could decorate, just a little. Daniel hesitated, but Claire encouraged him. Together, they searched through boxes in the attic, uncovering forgotten ornaments, garlands, ribbons, and old string lights. Dusty, tangled, imperfect, but filled with memories. They gathered around the living room and began transforming the space. Emily hummed Christmas songs, Claire adjusted ornaments with gentle care, and Daniel, quiet but present, found himself participating more than he expected. He felt pieces of himself reconnecting with long-lost emotions. When they finished, the living room glowed with warmth. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, revived through shared hands and shared hearts. Daniel stared at the lights flickering softly, feeling something he thought he'd never feel again, comfort. Claire made a simple dinner with the ingredients she found in the kitchen, just enough for a warm meal. They ate together, talking about nothing and everything. Daniel realized how much he missed the sound of conversation filling the space. He hadn't felt this alive in years. After dinner, Emily asked if Daniel had any Christmas traditions. He shook his head, embarrassed. Emily then excitedly introduced him to a tradition she and her mother had. Writing one thing they wished for. Not a gift, but something from the heart, and placing it under the tree. Daniel wrote slowly, uncertain. His wish wasn't for wealth or success. It was simple. To stop being alone. Claire placed her own note with a quiet smile, and Emily added hers enthusiastically. Emily soon fell asleep on the couch, clutching a pillow. Claire covered her with a blanket and whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne. You gave us more than shelter tonight." Daniel shook his head softly. "No," he replied. "You both gave me something I thought I'd lost forever." While Claire tucked Emily into the guest bed, Daniel reflected on how a chance knock on his door had shifted his entire night, maybe even his entire life. He looked at the ornament Emily had hung earlier. It glowed with the lights, warmer than any memory. Claire returned, smiling shyly. They talked quietly, sharing stories, fears, and small hopes. There was no pressure, no awkwardness, only connection. Daniel realized he wanted this moment to last longer than just one stormy night. The next morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight reflected off the fresh snow, making everything seem new. Claire prepared to leave, but Emily grabbed Daniel's hand. "Can we come next Christmas too?" she asked with sparkling eyes. Claire blushed, unsure how Daniel would react. Daniel knelt to Emily's level and said softly, "You can come for every Christmas. This house could use your light." Claire looked at him, surprised and touched. It felt like an invitation not just for holidays, but for something deeper, something hopeful. As they drove away, Daniel stood by the doorway, watching them disappear down the snowy road. But unlike every year before, he didn't feel the crushing weight of loneliness. He knew they would return. For the first time in a long time, Christmas no longer symbolized loss. It symbolized a new beginning, a new family he never expected but desperately needed.